They sent him in with a handshake and a smile. Earth had learned to do diplomacy the old-fashioned way. Calm words, empty hands, iron will underneath. The Galactic Council called for peace talks after decades of cold tension between Earth and the rest of the stars. Naturally, Earth obliged. They wanted peace, wanted it badly, but they never sent anyone without teeth. He walked into the Council's shining, floating chambers with his hands behind his back. No weapons, no armor. Just the dark suit Earth's diplomats wore, plain, sharp, the color of war shadows. His name? It didn't matter. Not to them, not yet. They called him human. That was enough insult already. The Council was made up of 21 species, insectoids with clicking mandibles, gelatinous beings that shimmered like oil, towering scaled things with crowns carved from their ancestors' bones. And all of them had one thing in common. They thought they were better than humans. They thought humanity crawled out of a hole and should have stayed there. So when the human envoy entered with his slight, unreadable smile, they mocked him, subtly, formally. One asked if his translator implant could handle complex logic. Another noted how fragile his frame looked under gravity above Earth norm. A few just stared, waiting for him to flinch. He didn't flinch. He smiled, the kind of smile a wolf gives before it eats. That's what made them nervous. They didn't say it, but the air shifted. The meeting dragged for 2 hours. Trade negotiations, border space rights, anti-terrorism pacts. Every offer from Earth was either rejected or rewritten into humiliation. The Council didn't want peace. They wanted submission. And Earth never did submission. At the final moment, as the diplomat turned to leave, the attack came. It wasn't flashy, just a thin dart, microscopic, elegant, designed by the Jalari assassins, shot from behind one of the royal thrones. They'd used it before on rogue kings, silent, clean, kills in under a minute. No pain. He caught it. The dart hovered between his fingers like a broken promise. Every species in the chamber froze, not because he caught it, but because he was still smiling. Then he placed the dart gently on the Council's center table, a slab of hyperglass etched with star maps, and spoke his first real words of the day. "You just tried to kill the wrong species." Silence. One of the elders, a crusted old being from the Jar Union, clicked his claws. This was a test of reflex, nothing more. His eyes didn't blink. Lying to me won't slow what comes next. Still smiling, still calm. That was when the lights failed, just for half a second. A flicker, enough to send a shiver through every being in the chamber, because lights on Council grounds never failed, not unless something was inside, something it couldn't stop. He didn't move. He didn't have to. In that flicker, 12 security personnel, from different species, hand-picked from across the systems, dropped dead. No sound, no visible wound, just gone. He tilted his head like he was listening to someone speak in his ear. Then nodded. "You attacked a peaceful representative," he said, stepping forward now. "Under your own roof, in front of witnesses. That gives Earth permission." "Permission for what?" asked a Council member, voice quaking. "To smile back." He tapped his temple once. And the room changed. Every star map on the Council table turned black. The floating holograms dissolved into error. A message scrolled across the air in Earth Standard language. "Operation Black Sun initiated. Earth response level. Total." In orbit, somewhere high above the Council's golden world, 22 ships uncloaked. Earth's ships. Not massive, not glowing, just matte black things with names like Gravedigger, Hell's Whisper, no negotiation. Ships built for one reason: revenge. They didn't fire, not yet. Because the man in the suit, the diplomat, wanted them to listen first. He leaned over the council table, real close, voice low. "You attacked one of us," he said. "You thought we'd kneel." His smile didn't waver. "But you forgot something important. Death doesn't scream. It smiles." They didn't speak for a while. Nobody dared to. The air was thick with fear, the kind that made even species without lungs feel like they were choking. 22 ships floated above their skies, invisible seconds ago, now undeniable. Ships that weren't there for negotiation. Ships that had only one job, to burn if called upon, and the man in the suit still hadn't blinked. "I want to be very clear," he said, voice low but hard, like a stone scraping steel. "Earth didn't come here looking for war." His eyes scanned the council chamber slowly, calmly, one pair at a time. He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. His presence was louder than any threat. "You brought war, you invited it, and now you want to measure how far we're willing to go." He paused, then smiled again. "We don't measure. We don't negotiate when blood's been drawn." The ambassador from the Ixar Confederacy, tall, silver-skinned, with vine-like appendages twitching in discomfort, finally found his voice. This is disproportionate. It was a mistake, miscommunication, perhaps a rogue element. You cannot hold all of us accountable." The human's smile widened, not friendly, not forgiving. The kind of smile someone wears at a funeral they planned themselves. "That's the problem with your kind," he said. "You think diplomacy is a game? That you can lie and bend until someone stronger than you breaks. You mistake patience for weakness." He walked slowly around the chamber, past council members who shifted back from his presence like he was radioactive. None of them knew what scared them more, his words or the way he walked like he owned the room. "The diplomat you tried to kill, that was me. Earth didn't send a second one. There was no backup. There's only me, always has been." The room went still. He had a name once, but the Galactic Council didn't deserve it. Earth called him many things, agent, weapon, last resort. But he was, at heart, a man, just one. And they still tried to kill him. That was the part they never understood. Humans didn't break when attacked. They evolved. "You want context?" he said, finally stopping at the center of the chamber again. "Let me give you a story." He didn't ask for permission. He just started talking. 3 years ago, the Relari Syndicate abducted 12 human colonists near the Delos Drift, said it was justified under some obscure trade violation, took them, vanished them. He looked up. We didn't scream. We didn't protest. We waited. Then he raised a single finger. 1 year later, the Relari homeworld suffered a global blackout. Every satellite fried. Every orbital station fell out of the sky. Do you know what they found afterward? The 12 colonists, safe, smiling, sitting on the Relari Capitol steps, eating our food. He lowered his hand. We don't respond in kind. We respond permanently. A thick-bodied creature from the Makar hierarchy grunted, 6 eyes narrowed. That proves nothing. You're bluffing. If you meant to destroy us, you'd have already done it. The human turned to face him, still wearing that calm, dangerous smile. That's what I want you to say. That right there. That overconfidence. That belief that humans bluff. That belief that we're still trying to prove something in this galaxy. He took a breath, slow and deliberate. We're not proving anything anymore. We've already decided who lives. At that moment, the holographic display above the council table came to life. No one had activated it. It just lit up. It showed one of the 22 ships in orbit, not launching weapons, not charging cannons, broadcasting. One by one, the display flipped through visuals from across the galaxy. Quiet, almost serene views of council-aligned planets, mining colonies, military outposts. Each one had a ship, a black one, cloaked, waiting. Eyes widened across the chamber. Every council species realized something at once. Earth hadn't just brought 22 ships to this planet. They had brought them everywhere, silent, watching, preparing. The man in the suit looked around the room, watching fear settle like frost. You've always thought of Earth as a border species. Loud, primitive, temporary. You had meetings about managing the human problem. You made jokes about how emotional we are, how irrational, how backwards. He stepped toward the Makar representative again, letting his voice go sharp. And yet here I am, in your chamber, alive, while your security's dead, your satellites hijacked, and your homeworld's surrounded. And you still think we're the problem. No one replied. Not even the arrogant ones, because the truth settled in their bones. Humanity wasn't just a problem. Humanity was inevitable. He leaned on the council table now, calm as ice. You thought Earth could be broken by threats, that we'd roll over because of your size, your technology, your numbers. He tapped the table once. We didn't beat you with bigger guns. We beat you with better silence. We watched, listened, waited, built. While you argued over tariffs and treaties, we were preparing for the moment you'd finally cross the line. He looked directly at the Wyxar diplomat again. And you crossed it today. Another click of his finger. A secondary display lit up, this time showing internal footage. Surveillance from the very council building, from quarters, from restricted areas. Humans had eyes inside. The diplomats looked at each other now. Some moved their hands in secret code. Others reached for communication implants. Dead systems. No signal. Nothing gets out, he said softly. Not until we're done. It was then that a younger delegate, not an elder, just a minor representative from the lower rim worlds, rose and tried to make a stand. This is coercion, terrorism. If Earth goes down this path, there will be consequences. The human's smile faded. For the first time. He walked toward the young delegate slowly. No anger. No hate, just sadness. Your kind tortured our diplomat. He's still in this room. You tried to erase him like a bug on a boot. Then his voice dropped lower. You don't get to speak about consequences. One snap. Just one. And the young delegate's translator implant sparked, violently, before he dropped to the ground, convulsing. He wasn't dead, but he wouldn't speak again for a while. You will sit. You will listen. You will learn. The human looked around again. Earth is not here to destroy, not unless we must. But we are here to end this idea that humans are beneath you, that we're tools or threats to manage. We don't need your counsel. We don't want your validation. All we ask for is respect. He looked at the Makar elder once more. And when we don't get it, we take something else. There was silence again. This time the silence wasn't from fear. It was from understanding. The kind that comes when the lie dies and the truth takes its place. The Galactic Council had ruled for thousands of years. They thought they were unshakable, eternal, and in a single afternoon, Earth made them feel like prey. The human took a seat at the head of the chamber, where no human had ever been allowed to sit. No one stopped him. I have 10 demands, he said, folding his hands, and now his smile returned. You'll listen to all of them. No one protested when he sat, not even the old ones, the ones who'd authored empires, witnessed genocide, and forged the laws of the stars themselves. Not even they said a word as the human took a seat at the apex of the galactic chamber, where only the supreme speaker ever sat. But now, the speaker was a corpse. One of the 12 who fell in that flicker of darkness. His body lay somewhere behind the arch columns, cooling on gold-etched tiles. Nobody had bothered to move him. Nobody dared to. The human leaned forward, resting his elbows on the star-glass table. "First demand," he said, without ceremony. "No further experiments or interference in human colonies. Not direct, not covert. No biological testing. No population data mining. No unauthorized diplomacy through third-party species. Violate this, and your colonies won't vanish quietly. They'll scream." A few murmurs erupted, soft ones, but the tone wasn't protest. It was panic wearing the mask of confusion. The Makar elder grunted. "You assume authority, you don't—" The human didn't let him finish. "You still think I'm asking?" He turned, not to face the elder, but to address the council chamber's ceiling, the command channel built into the very architecture of the room. "Patch in?" Immediately, a voice answered. "Command open." The human didn't shout. He simply said, "Bring one down." There was silence, a long, breathless stretch, and then a sharp hum as one of the central screens flared to life. The chamber watched as a Makar colony moon appeared. The camera view zoomed past the outer satellites, past mining platforms and supply docks, down to the cities carved into the moon's rust-colored stone. Then a soft thunder. No missiles, no beams of light, just a subtle pulse from orbit. And then, nothing. Just silence. The colony lights blinked out. Ships fell from the sky like silent tears. Communications died mid-echo. On screen, one of the cities collapsed inward like a structure eaten from the inside. The elder tried to speak. A roar. Maybe, or a scream. But what came out was something more animal. He staggered forward, slamming his fists against the table. "You genocidal bastard!" The human's eyes never left the screen. "We didn't kill them." He tapped the glass. "EMP burst. Tech neutralized. Life support will remain stable. Long enough for evacuation, unless you delay. Your choice." The chamber was dead silent. Nobody breathed too loudly. Even the ambient hum of the room seemed to fade. "Second demand," he continued, his voice like cold iron. "Humanity receives permanent, untouchable sovereignty in all claimed space. Not monitored, not inspected, not overseen." He raised one brow. "And you'll rename the Antares cluster to its original name, Sol's Reach, because we claimed it first. Your map lies, and we've grown tired of lies." No one argued. Not now. The room had changed. The power wasn't invisible anymore. It was tangible. It sat across from them, smirking, holding their world in one hand like a ripe fruit. The human didn't blink. He just kept going. "Third, reparations." One of the insectoid delegates hissed. "You want wealth?" "No, I want acknowledgement." He stood now, pacing slowly again. "For over 2 centuries, you taxed our colonies through proxy states. You sabotaged our engines under the pretense of safety protocols. You reclassified humans as Tier 3 expansionary life forms, so you could block our terraforming requests." He turned to face them. "And you told yourselves you were fair, that we were too reckless, too aggressive, too loud. You buried your theft in procedure, and now I want you to say it." He pointed to the Wixar delegate. "You first." The delegate's mouth worked silently. The human tilted his head. "Say it." The alien's voice was thin. "The Council unjustly extracted resources and authority from human colonies under fraudulent rulings." The human nodded once. "See how easy that was?" He moved on. "Fourth demand, dissolution of the Jalari assassin guilds. You used them to kill a diplomat, me. You'll dismantle them by cycle's end, or I'll hand their client logs to every mercenary fleet in the sector." Eyes widened. "You have those?" the Jar Elder rasped. "Earth has everything." He sat again. "Fifth, we want full records of genetic manipulation programs involving humans, all of them." He let that hang in the air like a loaded weapon. "Don't pretend you don't know. Half of you voted for it. Quiet votes. Slipped into agricultural funding bills. You've been tweaking variables in our outer colonies. Sterility ratios, lifespan suppression, aggression amplification." He leaned forward again. "You wanted to test evolution. You found something that scared you." No one denied it. He continued. "Sixth, Earth will be granted a permanent seat at the head of this council." He looked at the chair under him. "This seat, this one. Not some fabricated observer status like before. You give us the real voice, or the next seat burns." There was shifting again. Nervous, restrained. One delegate whispered something too quietly to hear. It didn't matter. The damage was done. The man was changing the power structure of the galaxy in real time, and no one was stopping him. "Seventh," he said, tapping the table twice. "No more propaganda networks targeting humans. You think we don't notice? You poison your broadcasts. You write us as savages in your stories. Pirates, brutes, villains." He looked around. "But when the real monsters come clawing at your doors, the Voidkin, the Fleshmass, the Coil, who do you call?" He didn't wait for them to answer. "Us." He tapped his chest once. "Because you know deep down that the monsters aren't scared of you. They're scared of us." He stood again, now fully in control. "Eighth, the planetary embargo on Mars ends. Now. Your orbiting checkpoints vanish by this time tomorrow." He looked to the Jalari representative, one of the few who still had the nerve to look him in the eye. "You put pressure on Mars because they didn't bow fast enough. You called it a pirate haven. We call it a frontier, and you're not welcome there anymore." He began circling again like a predator. "Ninth, recognition." He stopped. "You will record, broadcast, and teach, in every council species, that humanity is not a threat, but a power, equal, unquestioned. You will tell your young that Earth is not to be mocked, pitied, or underestimated. You will erase the words inferior primate from every council archive." He paused. "And you'll start referring to us properly, not as humans, not as Terrans, but as sovereign men." The word hit the room like a crack of thunder. Nobody moved. Nobody even dared blink. And then came the 10th. He turned his back to them, looking toward the high glass dome where the stars burned silently over their heads. "Final demand." He let the words settle slowly, like a slow blade twisting into old flesh. "You will declare, publicly, that Earth has won this war." Silence. He turned. "Because make no mistake, that's what this was. You declared it the moment you tried to silence me. You've spent decades trying to control our future with wires and laws. You've stolen, lied, tortured. And we let you." He stepped forward again. "Until now." He stood at the center of the chamber, watching their eyes. "This is your surrender." Then, without a word more, he placed a small black device on the table. A projector. He pressed it once. A final broadcast lit the chamber, not warships, not targets, but a recording of the attack, every moment, every word, every detail. From multiple angles, the dart, the assassination attempt, the silence, the death, the man's smile, and then the broadcast showed something else. Another council chamber, one not in this city, another sector, another world. Council members watching the same recording in real time. The broadcast had already begun. Across all known space, every council world was watching Earth's final message. The human smiled once more. Not cruel, not even cold, just resolute. "You get to choose now," he said softly. "Make the declaration, or wait until your people make it for you." Then he stepped away from the table, leaving the 10 demands behind, burned into their minds forever. The chamber didn't erupt in screams. It didn't devolve into chaos. That would have been too clean, too simple. Instead, what followed was worse. Silence. Long, crawling, suffocating silence, where pride choked reason and fear refused to be named. They all sat there, blinking at the footage playing on loop above them, the attack, the smile, the collapse of their illusion of superiority. The Jar Elder finally said it. One word. "We surrender." It wasn't noble. It wasn't even loud. It slithered out of his mouth like an infection leaking from a wound. There was no ceremony, no collective vote, no recorded statement. Just a single moment of quiet recognition that they had no cards left to play. The others didn't argue. They didn't need to. They had already surrendered the second the dart was caught, the second a smiling human told them death wore his face. The man in the suit, the diplomat, the weapon, didn't react, didn't smirk, didn't gloat. He simply turned and walked out of the chamber, and as the pressure of his presence vanished, the council finally began to breathe again, shallow, broken breaths. But outside that chamber, the galaxy was already on fire. The first riots began in the Coreward colonies. In the industrial capital of Zenthis Prime, a massive protest broke out before the broadcast even finished. Crowds of humans, workers, miners, engineers, poured into the streets, dragging down the holographic idols of the Council's unity gods. They didn't chant. They just broke things. Across the city walls, someone sprayed the words, "We smile back." On XR-controlled RIM stations, Council security attempted to silence the footage, block the feed, override the net, cut the power. But it was too late. Earth had used their own systems against them. The broadcast was embedded in everything, even children's cartoons, even porn, even emergency navigation signals. It was everywhere, unavoidable, unforgettable. On Jalari worlds, panic swept through the intelligence community. Their assassins, long considered unstoppable, were now marked for death by Earth's black ops cells. Some tried to go dark. Others tried to beg. None succeeded. By the end of the first day, 23 Jalari bases had been cleansed. No survivors, no remains. And on Council military fleets parked above rebellious colonies, officers started to question their orders. Why are we still enforcing blockades? What happens if Earth turns off our systems remotely? Who really controls this war? The doubt spread like wildfire, and doubt, when paired with fear, becomes mutiny. By the end of the week, 17 fleets had flipped, not to Earth, just away from the Council. Because if a smiling man in a suit could walk into the most secure chamber in existence and force a surrender with 10 words and a dead stare, then the galaxy wasn't the Council's anymore. It belonged to the ones who smiled last. Meanwhile, he watched it all unfold from orbit. His ship, Obsidian Rain, wasn't a dreadnought. It wasn't even particularly large. No massive guns, no flashy engines, just silence and precision. A ship made for people like him. He stood on the observation deck, hands behind his back, watching the data scroll. Uprisings, collapses, false apologies, bribes, threats. Nothing surprised him. The species of the Council had always been predictable, arrogant, performative, political. Even now, after surrendering, they were maneuvering behind the scenes, trying to find ways to minimize their shame, dilute the moment, rewrite the narrative. One Council delegate already tried to claim the human hadn't really won, that the 10 demands were still in discussion. She was found dead the next morning, her neural implant burned out from the inside. No message, no warning, just a final, brutal punctuation mark. He didn't enjoy it. But he didn't regret it either. You don't allow the defeated to write the history. You write it for them. Behind him, a voice finally spoke. A woman, not military, not political, just a liaison. She stood nervously, datapad shaking slightly in her hand. They're calling it the Day of the Smile. He turned slightly. Who is? Everyone. The colonies, outer systems, even some council populations. It's trending on over 3,000 networks. Humans are painting that smile on walls, on flags, on their faces. He said nothing. They're saying you... She hesitated. You're the man who made the galaxy blink. Still, silence. They're calling you the smiling god. That made him flinch, just a little. Stop it, he said. But shut it down, all of it. She blinked. You don't want the credit? He turned fully now, eyes locked on hers, cold, controlled. This wasn't about me. She didn't speak again. He turned back toward the stars. Have the fleet hold position, he said. No strikes unless provoked, no messages unless received. If they want peace, they can choke on it first. She nodded and left. Down below, within the council's inner circles, cracks turned into fractures. The Makar hierarchy declared emergency leadership reform. The Jalari disbanded 3 covert wings publicly. Privately, they evacuated every black site they'd ever built, because they knew what would come next. The Wixar's prime worlds fell into near civil war, half the populace demanding apology, the other half demanding revenge. But that second half? The ones who still thought they could challenge Earth? They began organizing, quietly, secretly, in dead systems and shattered moons, a shadow coalition, one that didn't care about surrender, one that didn't believe the war was over, one that wasn't ready to let go of power. They called themselves the Restored Flame. And they weren't diplomats. They were hunters. He knew about them before they even chose the name. He sat in silence aboard the obsidian rain, watching encrypted channels bleed with corrupted data. They were testing Earth's defenses. Small strikes, disappearances, rogue units. Not enough to make headlines, just enough to test the fire. But Earth didn't respond. Not with missiles, not with fleets. Instead, the deaths began again. Not loud, not public, just clean. A warehouse of weaponized drones on a backwater moon, gone, melted to glass. A secret lab designing human-specific neurotoxins. Everyone inside found dead. No wounds, no toxins, just brain dead. All of them smiling. Whispers began again. That the man from the chamber wasn't gone. That he was still watching. That the smile wasn't just a moment. It was a movement. He stood alone in the meditation chamber, a silent, gravity-less sphere where noise didn't exist. He watched a holomap of the galaxy spinning slowly. Each system pulsed with life, data, energy, and he knew something. They hadn't learned their lesson. The council bent the knee because they had no choice. But bending isn't breaking, and Earth would need to break them. Fully. Not with bombs, with memory. He recorded one final message. Not for the council, not for the flame, not for diplomats, for the galaxy itself. You all saw what happened. You saw them try to erase me, and you saw what followed. But don't mistake silence for mercy. We are still here. We are still smiling. You will never again speak of humans as primitives. You will never again decide our place for us. This isn't a new age. It's the old one, returned. The age of sovereign men. The age of earned fear. He closed the message and watched it go live, not through war broadcasts, but through music feeds, gaming networks, children's stories, memes. Let the galaxy feel it. Let them hear his voice when they slept. Let them wonder every day if the smile was still watching them. The assassination attempt wasn't bold. It was desperate. They didn't try to match Earth's tech. They didn't launch warships or heavy drones. They used something ancient, something personal, a knife, a man, a betrayal. It happened on Varelli's station, neutral ground, recently handed over to Earth's oversight per the Council's forced compliance. He'd gone there to speak with local system leaders, mostly representatives from smaller species, the ones too far from power to ever feel safe before Earth stood up and made the giants bleed. He came alone. No guards, no weapons, only a thin black data pad, and the same suit he wore the day the galaxy changed. They thought it was arrogance. It wasn't. It was bait. The man who approached him looked human. That was the first mistake. He wasn't. Genetically modified by the Jalari during their black projects, one of the remnants who slipped away after their labs were wiped. He'd trained for this, conditioned, programmed. He moved like a shadow behind the wall as the diplomat spoke with a delegation from the Shentar moon tribes. He waited until the moment the human turned his back. He moved silently, efficiently. Then he struck. The blade slid through the air, curved, humming, vibrating at a frequency meant to disrupt molecular stability. One cut was supposed to make flesh turn to sludge, but it never touched him. Not even close, because the man wasn't surprised. He turned as the blade came, calm, slow, even bored, and he caught the wrist. A blur of motion followed. Not fancy, not elegant, just precise. He shattered the attacker's forearm in 4 points with a single twist, then stepped in and brought his knee up into the assassin's ribcage with a bone-snapping crack. The creature fell, screaming. Not human. Not anymore. The diplomat crouched next to him, eyes quiet, measured. "Do you know what this station represents?" he asked softly. The thing hissed, its voice glitching between languages. "You think you ended it," it spat, "but the fire's still burning." The diplomat nodded slowly. "Good. I hope it burns." He leaned closer. "But you came for me. Not for a fleet, not for a colony. You made it personal." He reached into his coat and pulled out something small, a metal ring etched in Earth script. Nothing special to the eye. He slid it onto the assassin's twitching finger. "You want fire? I'll give it to you." He stood. Then he whispered something. The ring glowed, briefly, then pulsed with a sharp tone. And suddenly the assassin wasn't screaming anymore, because he wasn't breathing, and his eyes were smiling. The diplomats behind the glass, Shentar and others, stared in horror as the assassin's face froze in a wide, unnatural grin, his body locked, muscles petrified. And then, slowly, grotesquely, he began to laugh. Except he was already dead. The diplomat didn't stay. He simply turned and walked out. Within the hour, the recording hit every major broadcast feed. A message embedded in the footage. "You tried to take the smile from me, so now you wear it forever." Back on Obsidian Rain, he sat in the dark. He didn't watch the broadcast again. He didn't need to. He already knew what it would cause: fear, confusion, retraction, and eventually, retaliation. They couldn't help themselves. The restored flame was built from old pride. From the bones of cowards who didn't bleed the first time. They weren't warriors. They were leftovers. But even leftovers rot if you let them fester. He turned to the woman beside him, a different one this time. No official rank. Just a handler. Young. Calculating. Activate protocol? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, Phase 2, quiet burn. She nodded. Her hands danced across a screen. What's the target focus? She asked. He stared out the viewport at the stars bleeding past the hull. Memory. Phase 2 wasn't about killing leaders. It wasn't about destroying ships. It was about erasing legends. The restored flame had been whispering stories of the human overreach, their own propaganda machine, telling frightened species that Earth would become tyrants, that humanity would enslave, control, consume. The response? Silence. Then, precision. Every known historian who'd helped write those messages, gone. Disappeared mid-sentence during live interviews, archives containing the Flame's recruitment videos, corrupted, not erased, twisted, re-uploaded with audio spliced and visuals altered, until even their own people believed they'd faked their movement. One by one, the heroes of the resistance lost credibility, lost memory, lost voice. It wasn't about domination anymore. It was about psychological suffocation. Let them scream into a void that never echoes back. Let them realize the scariest thing in the universe isn't a fleet. It's being forgotten. Still, someone fought back. Not many, but enough. They launched a full-blown assault on the Obsidian Rain. Suicide ships, jammed signals, chemical warheads. They breached the hull. They thought he'd run. He didn't. He stood alone in the observation deck, one arm bloodied from shrapnel, suit torn, hair matted, watching the flames crawl across the outside of his ship like slow worms. The attackers burst in. 3 of them. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't even flinch. They stopped when they saw him, because his eyes were already mourning them. You still don't understand, he said softly. You think you're fighting a man. He stepped forward, bleeding down one arm. You're fighting the last lie in the galaxy. The first one raised a weapon. Fired. The human blurred. The round missed. So did the next. And the next. Then he was in front of them, too close, and death came fast. Not flashy, not loud, just 3 broken throats and a man standing alone again. Still breathing, still smiling. Later, as the ship patched itself and systems restored, the comms came alive with a private channel. A voice, grainy, mechanical, altered, echoed through the dark. We see you. He closed his eyes. You'll have to do more than that. You're not untouchable. No, he said. I'm just not scared of being touched. A pause. Why? He turned toward the speaker. Because the only part of me that felt fear died in that chamber. Another pause. You can't win forever. I don't need to, he said. Then he leaned in close to the comm. I just need to outlast the last coward in the room. The restored flame's final attempt came weeks later. A summit. False peace. A chance for dialogue, offered in the spirit of reconciliation. He accepted. Everyone told him not to. Everyone begged him not to. He smiled. I'm not going to the meeting. They blinked. Then who? He turned. The idea. The flame gathered on an asteroid world, remote, fortified, rigged with fail-safes. They thought they had control. They thought wrong. Because the human diplomat who stepped into their summit chamber wasn't human at all. Just a mimic drone. A shell. Programmed to smile, it spoke once. You wanted to speak with the smile. Now you'll wear it. Then it detonated. Not with fire, not with plasma, with silence. A black pulse bomb, frequency weapon, that shut down every device, implant, weapon, comm, brain interface. And in that silence, actual Earth operatives arrived. Not to fight, to erase. None of the Flame's leadership made it out. And when the galaxy looked for footage, there wasn't any. Just one single image. spread across every data node, a flame insignia, broken in half, with a smile drawn in ash across its face. They called it peace. On the surface, the galaxy seemed to have found it. The last coordinated rebellion by the restored flame had ended in ash and silence. Council systems bent to Earth's 10 demands without another word. Treaties were signed, border conflicts disappeared, even trade resumed across fractured sectors. But it didn't feel like peace. It felt like submission, unspoken. Heavy. Fragile. The galaxy didn't fear war anymore. It feared him. The man who walked into the most powerful chamber in existence and didn't walk out with blood on his suit, but with the galaxy in his palm. He wasn't on broadcasts anymore. No more messages, no threats, no smiles. He had simply vanished, and that made them fear him even more. He didn't go far. A hidden Earth-controlled outpost on the edge of the Serix Veil, isolated, off-grid, atmospherically unstable. The kind of place where a man could disappear without dying. He didn't wear a suit anymore. He didn't sit at tables, didn't write demands, didn't give speeches. He sat alone, watching, listening. Not to transmissions, but to the quiet. The kind of silence that only follows total victory. It wasn't satisfying. Not to him. Because deep down, he knew what they didn't want to admit. Peace built on fear isn't peace. It's a pause, and pauses always end. Back in council space, the adaptation began. New curriculum rewrote human history, not out of respect, but out of necessity. Children learned that humanity had risen above conflict and taught the stars a lesson in unity, conveniently forgetting who taught them and how. Council leaders bowed in public, praised cooperation, promised new shared futures. Behind closed doors, they whispered the same old words. How do we contain Earth? How do we survive them? In the outer sectors, something worse began to happen. Warship. He didn't want it. He didn't ask for it. But it grew like a tumor in the silence he left behind. Street artists painted his face in alleys, always with that same smile. Poets wrote verses calling him the Sovereign Flame. Militias not even aligned with Earth started carrying banners of black with a single phrase. We smile back. It stopped being about Earth, stopped being about demands. It became a symbol, a threat, used by people who wanted control. Power, fear, just like the ones they claimed to hate. And Earth? They didn't stop it. They couldn't. Because for all the fear the galaxy had for that man, his own people feared him just as much. The man they once called diplomat didn't care about the worship. What shook him more was the moment he realized he'd killed hope, not on purpose, but undeniably. Because the galaxy didn't believe in diplomacy anymore. Not really. Why would they? One man walked into a room, didn't raise his voice, and flipped the entire galactic hierarchy. Why talk? Why negotiate? Why believe in anything but power? He saw it happening even on Earth. Children trained harder, younger. Diplomats walked with security now. Trust became outdated. And behind every conversation, every smile, every alliance, there was one unspoken thought. What would he do? That haunted him more than death ever could. He was pulled back in only once, not by a threat, not by an uprising, but by a request, from Earth itself, a summit, not to make more demands, but to ask one question. What now? The galaxy had been reshaped. Power had shifted. Earth stood above the stars, unchallenged. But victory without direction was just weight, a burden. He arrived late, didn't wear the suit, didn't speak first. When they asked him what Earth should do with its dominance, he said nothing. They asked again. Still silence. Only when an aide, young, idealistic, stood and said, "We need to lead them," did he finally speak. No. Eyes turned. You don't lead through fear. He looked up. You manage fear. You isolate it. You don't build with it. One of the older generals frowned. Then what was all of this for? He stared back, cold. To make them listen. He stood now, slowly, deliberately. Fear opens the door. It doesn't keep it open. If we keep pressing down, they'll only wait to rise again. Someone asked the obvious. So we give it back? The power? He shook his head. No. Pause. But we lend it. Another pause. We give them choices. Let them govern again. Let them feel control. Let them build. Because the second they believe we won't let them, they'll break. The general didn't like it. Why should we care if they break? The diplomat looked out the window, out at the stars bleeding through the dark. Because the last time they broke, he said, I walked into a room and came out carrying the weight of an entire galaxy's silence. He looked over his shoulder, expression neutral. I'm not sure I can do it again. They agreed, not because they wanted to, because they understood. He'd won them the war, but he couldn't win the future with the same smile. Over the next year, Earth began to step back, slightly, just enough. The Council wasn't restored, but it was repurposed, under human observation. Decisions made locally again, with final arbitration from Earth. Treaties were rewritten, not in fear, but in realism. And quietly, slowly, the galaxy began to function. Trade, culture, even laughter returned in some corners. But the fear never fully faded. How could it? You don't forget the man who rewrote the stars with a sentence. You don't unknow the weight of a quiet smile. He never returned to public life. Never again stepped into chambers. Never gave a second speech. He didn't need to. His name became a scar, one people didn't speak, but never stopped remembering. Some said he died. Some said he was frozen, Earth's last weapon, locked away in case the stars forgot the cost. Others believed he never existed, just a myth, a story, a warning. Careful who you silence, he might smile back. One night, years later, on a colony called Ashvale, long forgotten by most of the galaxy, a child asked her grandfather if the story was true. Did he really smile when they tried to kill him? The old man stared out the window for a long time. Then he said, No. She frowned. But they said, No, he repeated. He didn't smile because they tried to kill him. He looked at her. He smiled because he knew they already lost. The child didn't understand. Not then. But she remembered it. She always would. The first signs came quietly. A fringe system, Veru Delta, stopped responding to council pings. It wasn't alarming. Outer systems went silent all the time, usually power failures, sometimes civil unrest. But then another world, Jovel 3, followed. Then a mining colony, then a relay station. Each one went dark, not destroyed, just disconnected. As if someone had quietly pulled the plug on their voice. It wasn't war, it wasn't rebellion, it was erasure. And Earth noticed. A coded message was intercepted from one of the blackout systems, heavily encrypted. Contorted across old Earth dialects, languages not used in a century, but they cracked it. 3 words. We smile first. At first they thought it was a tribute, an echo of the old message, the movement that once shook the stars. But they were wrong. It wasn't an echo. It was a mockery. His name was Valen Drex, human-born, mid-level Earth bureaucrat, forgotten by most, Never served, never fought, just watched. Grew up in the era of the diplomat's silence, the man who rewrote history by doing what no other human could. Win without screaming. But Valen? He misunderstood it. He thought the smile was a tactic, a brand, a tool of control. He never understood what was behind it, the years of patience, of loss, of earned silence. Valen Drex was an imitator, and imitators are always more dangerous than originals, because they don't know the weight of what they're copying. He called his movement the First Smile, not out of reverence, but arrogance. He claimed the man in the suit only opened the door. Now it was time to kick it off the hinges. His broadcasts were slick, carefully designed, human-centric, but not Earth-loyal. His voice was smooth, confident, laced with false empathy and controlled anger. He spoke to the discontent, the outer rim humans who never got a seat at the new council. The children born in colonies ruled by systems that only feared them, never trusted them. He spoke to the forgotten power. We don't wait for permission anymore. We don't smile after they bleed. We smile first, and we smile while they burn. His flag? Black, of course. But instead of one smile, it bore 1,000 tiny white ones, carved into a spiral, a storm of death grinning into the void. They began by taking Sinterhold, a forgotten penal colony orbiting a fractured moon. No one cared, until they broadcast the warden being executed with a smile carved into his chest. Then they moved on to Kravix Delta, posing as Earth inspectors. They took the council envoy hostage and made him read their manifesto live just before detonating a bomb beneath the capital's civic dome. No warning, no threats, just a smile before the fire. On Earth, panic bloomed quietly. The obsidian rain hadn't been seen in years. The man who once bent the galaxy with 10 words had vanished, gone to rot in solitude or cryogenics or myth. But Earth knew something the stars didn't. He was still alive, and they hadn't called him because they feared what he might become if they did. But now they had no choice. They found him on the edge of the far dust rift, living in an old gravity-warped station surrounded by silence and dark water systems that hummed like sleeping giants. He didn't answer at first. Just stared at the transmission with tired eyes. They showed him the images, Valen Drex, the bombings, the spiral flag, the words, "We smile first." Still silence. Then he spoke, voice rougher, older. Imitator. The Earth agent nodded slowly. More than that now. He's turning it into doctrine. He said nothing. The agent stepped forward. People are following him. Not just humans. Merc groups, colonies, pirates. Some think he's your heir. The man raised one brow. My what? Your replacement. That made him chuckle. The first time he'd laughed in years. Then he looked into the screen. Dead center. Call the rain. The obsidian rain took 6 hours to reach the rally point near the Duraxis belt. It didn't roar. It didn't shimmer. It just appeared, like a thought the galaxy forgot it had. The black ship opened for him like it remembered his blood. He didn't put on a suit this time. No pageantry. Just a coat, heavy and faded. The crew didn't speak. They didn't salute. They simply nodded, because they remembered. You don't greet death. You just prepare to follow it. His first message wasn't a threat. It was a sentence. Valen Drex is not the smile. He's the infection that follows it. He didn't make it public. He didn't need to, because in under an hour, every system touched by the first smile went silent. Their leaders didn't die. They disappeared. Gone. No footage, no broadcasts. Just empty rooms where mouths used to scream. Valen didn't panic. He grinned. He called it the Second War of the Smile, but he made one mistake. He thought he was equal. They met once, not on a battlefield, not in a chamber, but in a dead ship floating between systems, a cold drift cruiser turned hollow sanctuary. No guards, just them. Valen walked in first, dressed in a replica suit, perfect smile painted across his face. "I was hoping we'd meet," he said. The man said nothing. Valen sat across from him, unafraid. "You started it. I'm finishing it. You should be proud." Still nothing. Valen leaned forward. "They follow me now." Finally, a reply. "No." Valen frowned. "You don't get to deny it. The movement is real, the flags, the doctrine." The man looked up, eyes hollow. "I didn't build a movement. I left a warning." Valen laughed. "Call it what you want. I'm what comes next." A pause. Then, finally, the smile returned. Not wide, not warm, just ancient. "You're what comes after forgetting." He stood. Valen did too. "What now? You kill me? That's it?" The man nodded. "No, I erase you." Valen tried to speak, but the air collapsed. His voice froze in his throat, muscles locked, neural signals silenced by a microfield built into the seat. He stood, struggling, eyes wide in realization. The man walked past him slowly, whispering into his ear, "You smiled first, but only because you didn't live long enough to see the real thing." And then Valen vanished. Not in blood, not in fire, just gone. No body, no name. Just one new message, broadcast to every First Smile colony. There's only ever been one. Time passed. Years this time. Not in chaos, not in war, but in reconstruction. The last spark of rebellion, the first smile, died in silence. Its false prophet vanished without a trace. No funeral, no martyrdom, no echo. Just erasure. The man who ended him returned to his quiet station beyond the far dust rift, and this time he didn't answer Earth's calls. He didn't need to. The galaxy had learned, and remembered. But the thing about memory? It doesn't stay still. It gets rewritten. It becomes legend, and that's when things get dangerous again. On New Meredith, a teaching hologram showed children the day Earth liberated the stars. But the man? He wasn't a weapon anymore. He was a philosopher. A peace envoy with a brilliant mind. His smile, rebranded. A symbol of empathy. A bridge between violence and restraint. The broadcast showed him speaking softly in artificial simulations, his tone romanticized, carefully edited, sanitized. The 10 demands, reworded as 10 hopes. Not one mention of the bodies, of the dart, of the silence between words. He watched it once, across a low-res feed sent anonymously to his station. He said nothing. He didn't laugh. He simply deleted it. Because he understood something now. They weren't just erasing the truth. They were replacing it. Elsewhere, in council space, statues were being erected. Statues of him. But none were accurate. One depicted him holding a dove, another with his arms spread like a saint. One even showed him kneeling, accepting peace from alien hands. Not one of them captured his face. Not one got the smile right. Because you can't sculpt a weapon that looks like a man. And you can't carve a moment in time. But they tried, because the galaxy needed to believe the war was won with peace. They couldn't accept what really happened, that it was won with fear. On Earth, the governments had stabilized, their influence stretched into the farthest systems. But with power came a strange problem. Faith. New groups began to form, not cults exactly, not religious, but obsessed. calling themselves things like the teeth of the smile, the sovereign will, and echoes of silence. They didn't seek power, they didn't riot, they simply studied him, copied his walk, his cadence, his recorded tone, wore suits with quiet confidence, and watched people flinch. They didn't want to lead the galaxy. They wanted to become the next him, and that terrified Earth more than any war, because they knew the truth. There was never going to be a next. There was only ever one. One night, alone on his station, he stood before the mirror. He was older now, slower. The sharpness hadn't dulled, but it had sunk deeper. His face had changed, but his eyes hadn't. Still steady, still smiling, in the wrong moments. He reached into a drawer and pulled out something wrapped in cloth, unfolded it, the dart, the original one, untouched, deactivated, still humming faintly, as if angry that it had failed. He turned it over in his hand. For a second, he didn't see a weapon. He saw the exact moment he became more than a man, and it disgusted him. He contacted Earth one final time. No video, no audio, just text. "You must let me fade." They responded immediately. "We can't. You're the anchor." He replied. "Then cut the chain." Silence for 5 minutes. Then a reply. "What do you need?" He didn't answer, because he'd already made his decision. A month later, the obsidian rain was found drifting near the edge of the null expanse. Empty. No life signs, no logs, no escape pod launched. Just a single sentence etched into the internal display screen. The galaxy doesn't need a god. It needs to forget it ever feared one. They searched for him. For years. Found nothing. Not a trail, not a whisper, not even a lie. Because he hadn't died. He'd simply left the story. But the galaxy didn't forget, because absence doesn't erase legacy. And soon, a new kind of terror began to bloom. Not war, not rebellion, interpretation. One system started arresting citizens who smiled at security officials. Another passed laws banning any public use of his quotes, called them coercive speech. Entire planets rewrote their legal code under the banner of preventing smile doctrine resurgence. And just like that, the man who once demanded peace through fear became the excuse for totalitarianism. He became the myth dictators pointed to. Not the man who stopped war, but the one who justified it. Years later, a scholar named Draelus Vorn published a controversial book, The Smile That Broke the Stars. In it, he claimed the diplomat never existed, that the council collapse was orchestrated by Earth's AI regime, that the smile was invented, a narrative designed to unify human superiority through fear mythology. He toured hundreds of systems, giving talks titled, "Fear is Fiction, the Smile Was Never Real." He stood on stage, laughing. Until one night, during a broadcast, something strange happened. His audio cut mid-laugh, and on the screen behind him, an error appeared. Just 5 words. "Careful what you forget." The feed died. They never found him. That became the new ghost story. Forget the smile, and it smiles back. Kids dared each other to whisper the diplomat's name into comm lines at midnight. Teenagers downloaded grainy ancient footage of the council attack and froze the exact frame he caught the dart, daring themselves to stare at it too long. Some said the man still lived, in data, in black code, in the dead zones of the galaxy where no signals echo. Others said he wasn't a man anymore. He was the memory of power, the shadow of consequence. One child, a girl born on a system rebuilt under Earth's order, asked her father something one night as they watched an old hollow painting of the council dome. Did he ever smile because he was happy? The father didn't answer at first. Then he said, "No, he smiled because they made him." She frowned. "Who?" "Everyone." He looked at her. "And that's why you shouldn't ever try to be him." "Why?" He looked at the stars. "Because the moment you wear a smile to make the galaxy fear you..." He paused. "You'll forget what it's like to smile for yourself." And so it ended. The man disappeared. The imitators died. The galaxy moved on, a little more cautious, a little more fractured, but always watching shadows for a suit that no longer walked among them. Because they knew, deep down, if they ever made the same mistake again, if they ever attacked another diplomat, if they ever tried to silence someone just for speaking quietly, there'd be a moment, a flicker, a feeling, like cold breath down their spine, and they'd see it. Just once. A man in the corner of the room, hands behind his back, eyes steady, and wearing a smile. That meant it was already too late.